Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into an event of absolutely awe-inspiring cosmic scale. To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to picture the Earth just before this exact moment, okay? It's the late Cretaceous period. The planet is basically this massive greenhouse world, just teeming with giant reptiles. The air is super thick, the forests are incredibly dense, and dinosaurs? Well, they're the uncontested rulers of the land, the sea, and the sky. And they had been for over 150 million years. Sure, mammals are around, but there are mostly these tiny, nocturnal little creatures just kind of scurrying in the shadows of the giants. It's a stable, vibrant world that is completely oblivious to the fact that its entire reality is about to be violently and permanently rewritten. We're looking at a singular moment in time that literally dictated the reality you and I live in right now. It's a story of unimaginable devastation, for sure, but it is also the ultimate story of our very own origins.
One day changed the history of Earth forever. I mean, it sounds exactly like a tagline you'd hear in some dramatic sci-fi blockbuster, right? But no, this is absolute historical reality. One single solitary day shifted the entire trajectory of our planet. It acts as the ultimate dividing line in Earth's history. Like, there's the world before this Tuesday and the world after. It is incredibly rare in geology or paleontology to be able to point to a 24-hour period that fundamentally reshapes the entire biosphere. But this is the ultimate exception. An ecological balance that held for millions of years was just shattered in a matter of hours. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the exact moment this incredible catalyst struck, setting off a chain reaction that would eventually pave the way for us.
So, roughly 66 million years ago, our story really kicks off. A massive asteroid, we're talking roughly 6 to 9 miles wide. So picture a rock the size of Mount Everest, comes hurtling through the vacuum of space, and it's moving fast. It's traveling at an estimated 45,000 miles per hour, and it slams right into the shallow waters of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula down in modern-day Mexico. It created what we now call the Chicxulub crater. But this wasn't just some localized natural disaster. This was literally the inciting incident for our entire existence. The sheer kinetic energy of a rock that huge, hitting the Earth at those terrifying speeds, it's almost impossible for us to actually comprehend. It was not a gentle touchdown. It was like a cosmic hammer striking an anvil, instantly vaporizing rock, ocean water, and really anything unfortunate enough to be within 1,000 miles of ground zero.
To even begin to understand this magnitude, we have to look way past conventional explosives, or really, even our most destructive modern weapons. When scientists measure the energy released by that impact, we aren't talking about a single nuclear weapon. No! This collision released the equivalent of billions of atomic bombs detonating all at the exact same moment. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, unadulterated violence of the event. Just pause for a second and try to visualize that magnitude. Billions! The Earth's crust literally liquefied and rebounded from the impact, creating this temporary mountain that was actually higher than Everest before it just collapsed right back down on itself. The atmosphere directly above the impact site was blown away into space for a brief moment. I mean, it was an explosive release of energy that instantly transformed a thriving, stable planet into a landscape of utter chaos and unimaginable searing heat.
And the environmental destruction? It was this rapid, totally unstoppable global chain reaction. Just minutes after the impact, trillions of tons of superheated rock and debris were blasted up into space, only to immediately rain back down through the atmosphere. And as this debris re-entered, it heated up like millions of shooting stars, basically turning the sky into a giant broiler oven. The radiant heat was so intense that it spontaneously ignited plant life all across the globe, causing these uncontrollable megafires to just spread like wildfire. Then, within hours, the immense shockwaves displaced the oceans, forming giant tsunamis. We're talking waves towering hundreds of feet high, crashing far inland and just scouring the continents. But here's the crazy part. The immediate explosive destruction, the fires and the massive waves, that wasn't even the deadliest part of the catastrophe. Over the following months, the vaporized rock, sulfur, and ash that hadn't rained back down formed this incredibly thick, choking veil high up in the stratosphere. It completely blocked out the sunlight, plunging the entire Earth into a sudden, freezing twilight.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the true extinction wasn't actually caused by the initial blast. It was caused by that chilling darkness that followed. Think about it. When you take away the sun for months or maybe even years on end, the very foundation of life just crumbles. Step 1. The plants died. Without sunlight, photosynthesis grinds to a sudden, screeching halt.
On land, the vast, lush forests withered away. In the oceans, the phytoplankton, which is absolutely crucial because it's the base of the entire marine ecosystem, well, it died off in massive, massive numbers. And then, inevitably, we see step 2. The food chains completely collapsed. These intricate, delicate food webs that had taken ages to evolve were effectively starved out. The huge herbivorous dinosaurs, the ones requiring massive amounts of daily vegetation, they starved first. And without the herbivores around, those towering apex predators, the carnivores, they soon followed, watching their food supply just vanish into this endless freezing night.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at exactly how devastating that ecological collapse actually was. And, maybe more importantly, who actually made it through. This sudden darkness wiped out a staggering chunk, nearly 75% of all species on Earth. That massive 3/4 majority includes all the non-avian dinosaurs, the flying pterosaurs, the giant marine reptiles in the oceans. They were simply gone, finished. But what about that tiny 25%, the ones that managed to somehow scrape by and survive this incredible planetary bottleneck? Well, why them? It turns out the survivors shared some very specific traits. They were mostly small. They were generalists, meaning they could eat almost anything, from insects to decaying matter. And crucially, many of them lived underground or in deep water. Burrowing animals, including small mammals, frogs, and certain reptiles, they were naturally shielded from that initial horrific heat pulse and the worst of the freezing temperatures that followed. They didn't need tons of fresh leaves or massive prey, they just needed to hold on.
Out of that profound global darkness comes a realization that kind of shifts our entire perspective. One single event completely changed the future of life on Earth. The slate was, for all intents and purposes, wiped clean. The reigning giants, creatures that had absolutely dominated every major ecosystem for over 100 million years, were permanently removed from the board. But nature abhors a vacuum. That immense destruction inadvertently cleared the path for entirely new forms of life to emerge. With the apex predators out of the picture and these massive ecological niches suddenly sitting completely empty, the survivors crawled out of their burrows into a quiet, barren world. It was the dawn of the Cenozoic era. This triggered a rapid, really explosive period of evolutionary diversification, where the small and the adaptable finally inherited the Earth.
So, the crucial point is this. Without that asteroid, humans might never have existed. The catastrophe that ended the age of the dinosaurs was the exact same lucky twist of evolutionary fate that actually made space for our ancient ancestors. Remember those mammals that survived the Chicxulub impact? They were mostly these small, shrew-like creatures. For millions of years, they had been kept small, basically suppressed by the intense predatory pressure of the dinosaurs. But once that pressure vanished, those furry little survivors began to evolve. They started to grow and adapt into incredibly diverse forms, eventually leading to early primates and, ultimately, to us. It is a fragile, completely unbroken lineage. Which means, crazy as it sounds, that ancient cataclysm millions of years ago in the Yucatan is directly responsible for you and me sitting here today.
And that leaves us with one of the most fascinating questions we could ever possibly ask. What if it had missed? Seriously, what if that 6-mile-wide rock had just passed harmlessly by into the void of space? Our world would look entirely different today. Dinosaurs had already been evolving for 165 million years. They were incredibly successful, highly adapted animals. If they hadn't been wiped out, they would likely have just continued to evolve and dominate the planet. Mammals? We might have remained tiny, nocturnal scavengers, never getting the chance to develop into the creatures we know today, let alone develop complex brains and build sprawling civilizations. We are, quite literally, the cosmic beneficiaries of a random rock intersecting with Earth's orbit at the exact wrong time for the dinosaurs and the exact perfect time for us. It's a pretty profound thought to leave you with. If this deep dive into our origins amazed you, and you love exploring these mind-bending moments of history and science, don't forget to follow for more explainers. See you next time.